Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
The Republican National Committee has just declared us the official nominee, and so we're the official nominee of the Republican Party.
Well, there it is. The battle's on. It's Biden-Trump, Trump-Biden version 2.0. Welcome in, along with producer Hannah, Stephanie Bell, John Marsh. The whole gang's here, and now you have choices to make. Well, you have at least two, no, three. Is there going to be a fourth party? No labels? Who knows? But the battle's on.
I saw an article this weekend that the AP wouldn't allow anyone to use the word presumptive nominee until they had the number of delegates. So yesterday, both candidates crossed that threshold, and now we've got two presumptive nominees. And this sets up the first presidential rematch since 1956.
Wow. So it's been a ton of time.
And so the last presidential rematch came in 1956. Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson for the second time. And there's only one president that has done the take a break and come back, and that was Grover Cleveland.
Yeah. Donald Grover Cleveland Trump. They've been...
There you go.
Now, John, who did you vote for in the Stevenson-Eisenhower rematch?
I voted for the third-party candidate.
Us old guys have to joke about that kind of stuff, you know.
I think it's interesting that this is all, it's shaping up to be the same battle, but it's not the same support for Joe Biden. I mean, if you look at the polls say black and Hispanic voters are looking at Donald Trump.
They are. And the question, I was listening to a great podcast by a pollster, and that's really all they talk about all the time. And he has guest pollsters in, and they were talking about that, John, how at least according to the early polls, it seems as though, I mean, this is among the highest, well, probably the highest that I can remember, probably anyone can remember, of black support. 20% in the latest poll, higher than it, 27% at one time I saw, one poll, an outlier. The question is, will African-American voters come home, so to speak, come home to the Democrat Party and Joe Biden, or are they going to migrate away? It appears as though young black males are, in fact, much more avid about Donald Trump, and that's where a lot of that demographic change is coming.
Will they go to the polls, though? There's the question.
It is. Turnout will be a big deal, no doubt about it. The other thing that is a unique number, the can't stand either quotient of the electorate in the Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump year in 2016 was 18%. It was much lower in 20. It's back up to 20% now. In other words, I'm not voting for any of them. And that's where the RFK factor may be very, very interesting this cycle. It could be really fascinating.
Yeah, do those people stay home or do they come out? And RFK is really, he's putting out ads. He did a State of the Union response. He's hired people. We're hopeful to talk to someone that he's hired here in the Midwest region. He yesterday announced that he has decided who he wants as his VP picks.
Jesse Ventura is one of them,
and Aaron Rodgers.
And Aaron Rodgers
is the other one. So he's making waves, and whether that. I think that could resonate amongst the people who were like, not either one of these two guys.
Wait, the football player?
Yeah,
that would be the
Rodgers?
one. Yep.
Oh boy.
Now wait a minute. Here, whoa, hang on a minute. It just hit me because overnight I heard that. Didn't Aaron Rodgers get vaccinated and take a lot of heat for it because he got the COVID-19 vaccine?
I thought he didn't get it.
Yeah, I think he took a lot of heat for being an anti-vaxxer.
Oh, okay. I thought he did. All right. I guess I got it wrong. Well, because I was going to say it would be incongruous for, that would be wrong for him to do that. So, all right. So, he said in November of 21, Rodgers tested positive for COVID. This is from the esteemed talk, Pro Football Talk on NBC Sports. It became obvious at that point, based on protocols that applied to him after testing positive, that he had not been vaccinated. That prompted many to revisit his comments when he was asked by reporters if he'd been vaccinated. Oh, he later admitted he deliberately misled reporters. Oh.
I forget the word that he used.
Oh, he said, I've been vaccinated. I've been vaccinated.
Immunized is, I think, what he said, right?
Yeah, that's what he said. And I think people assumed he meant vaccinated, but he was doing some hippy-dippy.
Well, that disqualifies. I mean, anyone out there who wants to say they'd vote for anyone who would align with someone who told a mistruth? He lied. He did.
That eliminates every politician ever.
You make a very good point. That makes my point. You should avoid really having politicians determine what's in your life. That's why you should always be more of a libertarian conservative than a conservative and neoconservative, right? Stephanie's being very quiet there, John.
You would hope. I mean, no, I think I'm more libertarian than you, perhaps. I probably not as libertarian as our friend Gary Nolan, but no, I think we should have more freedom and less government, certainly.
And everybody should just mind their own business.
I think it's getting harder and harder because we've got quote-unquote conservatives out there, especially in D.C., some who hail from our very own state who thinks government is the answer, and we're, squelching people's free speech. We're banning corporations from operating in the free market. I mean, we're hanging out with the Teamsters. I don't know what's happening.
TikTok.
We also have conservatives that want to make some people pay for other people's child rearing by other people, but that's another issue. That's another one that is not. So conservatism has been redefined. There's no doubt about it. And populism is now, I guess, the foundational cornerstone of Donald Trump's Republican Party. It's populism, and he's certainly no advocate for change in Social Security or Medicare. There's a great Biden campaign ad out because Donald Trump was asked about, cuts in that. He says, well, there's a lot of room for cutting. What he meant was cutting in the waste of management. But, of course, Biden is running with that. I am getting so tired of the attacks and the assaults and the out-of-context sound bites that the campaigns take. I mean, am I the only one that is just... I'd almost vote for Bernie Sanders just because Bernie Sanders, you at least know where he stands. You can count on it, right? There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
I mean, I think that's people's love affair with Trump is that, we had Barack Obama before that, and it was like everything that came out of his mouth was very measured, and you didn't think like what was coming out of his mouth was actually what he said behind closed doors. And Trump, it's like whatever's in his head falls right out of his mouth. And so
no filter.
That's right. That's kind of refreshing though, because you don't think, hey, when that guy goes behind closed doors, he's saying something else. You're getting it all right there, and I think people really resonated with folks, and they finally felt that they were getting some authenticity.
And one thing too, Stephanie, and to Randy's point, is the former President Donald Trump has made it very clear he does not want to cut Social Security. However, Jason Smith was in town. He chairs Ways and Means. When he filed a couple of weeks ago, I went to interview him. I had a big story up on both of our websites. Smith says if nothing is done at all, if Congress doesn't do anything, that fund will be insolvent by 2032. He did say that, and that his mother lives on it. She depends on it. She's 80 years old, and she told him if he doesn't get this fixed, he's not welcome for Thanksgiving.
Wow!
So he said he says it has to be bipartisan. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan actually worked on trying, and they probably saved it for a couple of generations. They did it in 1983, but that took that was just a different era, and those two men worked together.
There's I've said it once and I say it again. Everyone has their hand in the pot. Everyone's sucking off the what of government. Everyone's at the trough of the pork feedlot, and that's what's going on. I mean, and so no one's going to vote down anyone that's going to take away from their generosity that they're getting through the redistributionist tax and spend system that we have. That's the national system. That's the national news. School choice in the news in Missouri, because in the Senate, meh kind of a bill passed yesterday. It's more money for public schools, a little pandering for charter and this and that. No real substantive change. The bill started out at single-digit pages, grew to 76 pages, and after negotiations, 150 pages. I mean, it's preposterous. This is not a hard thing to do. Just give people the money that you're spending on behalf of kids, and we're going to talk with Susan Pendergrass from the Show Me Institute at 8:08, and give people the money. Let them spend it where they want to. You want to go to a parochial school? You want to go to a Wiccan school? You want to go to no school? Let people do their own education. I'm sorry. This has got to stop. We've got to stop determining how supporting government indoctrination schools. More and more money spent. Kids are coming out. I've got a great story about that. College professors are saying students are absolutely wholly unprepared in the droves.
Well, and I think importantly about yesterday, I mean, I think we had heard rumors that it was going to go all night. They actually were out quite a bit yesterday, I think, negotiating what was going to go on, and they negotiated with the Democrats, and the Democrats put some funding in there. Importantly, we don't know what the fiscal note on that bill is yet. They haven't had time to prepare that. And so I think the Senate, it still has to come back and be third read in the Senate before it makes its way over to the House. So it's not a done deal, but I do think a lot of people were kind of patting themselves on the back and like saying, oh, we're victorious last night. And it's like, really, should you really get brownie points for doing something that you should have done like 5 years ago when everyone agreed that this was the right thing to do? Because now we've had, I would have preferred school choice. My son's now in sixth grade. I was testifying about it and we were talking about it 6 years. Guess what? We didn't get school choice and it's too late for my family. And so there have been, millions of, maybe not millions, hundreds, hundreds, if not thousands of families affected by their inaction over the last several years. And so am I glad that it got done? Yes. But have we waited too long? Also, yes. And are we potentially caving to the Democrats when we don't need to do that? I don't think. Yes. So we'll see what that fiscal note is and see if the House can't rein in some of these extra provisions.
And Republicans have a supermajority. We forget that a lot. I mean, you rarely if you look at Twitter, legislative Twitter, you'd swear progressives run the show. I mean, they're on there all day and night. But the Republicans are up 24-10. But it's just to be able to get it through because the Democrats were filibustering. They felt like they had to make concessions or negotiate as well. I want to point out something as well. You're talking about the national and state. We got a lot of local stuff going on today. We've got some large hail coming to town tonight, Randy.
Oh, hail. And
it's a low tornado threat, but also I want to point out that there is a GoFundMe that has been set up for the young girl who had her head slammed into the concrete repeatedly near Hazelwood East.
Horrid video.
And I've linked to it an updated story. Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey wants this suspect charged and tried as an adult. But I can tell you that the family is saying she has a skull fracture, major brain bleeding, major brain swelling, and that family does not have medical insurance, Randy Tobler.
And I am going to go back and look at a quote out of your story from this morning from Andrew Bailey. Quote, look, if
nominees that both candidates have passed the threshold to be the nominees. So we are set up for our first presidential rematch since 1956. Of course, that was when Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson for the second time. So setting that back up, I like a little history fact for your, what is today, your Wednesday? But I think the question now, obviously there's a lot of questions about who will be the VP pick. Of course, RFK was letting us know he wants to pick Aaron Rodgers or Jesse Ventura. We haven't heard much more out of Trump. There's obviously a lot of speculation. But I think now the real question comes down to, is there going to be a debate? That I think it would be disastrous for Biden. Yeah. Of course, Trump has come out on social media and says, I'll debate him anytime, any place, let's go. And Biden says, I'm going to watch Trump's behavior before I decide whether to debate him. I mean, Biden would get absolutely crushed. And so I don't think there's any way they let him out of the basement for a debate. But I think it's bizarre that you would have a presidential race with no debate.
It worked in 20 where he just stayed sequestered. It worked.
There was COVID and things. I don't know. I think it's bizarre, but I think we know where they stand on the issues. We know the differences. But I'm kind of like a traditionalist. I want to see a good old fashioned debate. All right. Yesterday on the international front, we were also getting word that the U.S. will provide Ukraine with an additional $300 million in weapons. That's supposedly going to last a few more weeks. Of course, Biden has requested an additional $60 billion that remains tied up in Congress, with Republicans wanting something done about the border first. Also, we are getting some ominous warnings from Putin saying that if we put any troops in Ukraine, it's an escalation. And
Macron talked about putting French troops in there, and then that triggered ahead of his re-election. Yes. Putin's saber rattling.
So not the best there. We were also hearing that the House is poised to pass this TikTok ban today, and Biden has said that he is going to sign it if it ever gets to his desk. Now, we're not quite sure how it's going to fare in the Senate, but TikTok has people say you lawyered up. They lobbyist up. I don't know what the term is there, but they've got Kellyanne Conway and some other people. Trump's kind of waffling on his TikTok stuff now, and it's a mess. But TikTok's doing everything it can.
Is that the divestiture bill that they have to divest it? It could still be around, but someone like Elon Musk would have to buy it, right? Because it would no longer be under control of Chinese purse strings.
Something like that.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. And then also we've got the her testimony from yesterday, and we did see some of the transcripts yesterday. It's both sides were kind of mad at him and had issues with how the investigation went down. If you kind of look at the transcript and read through it, it's really like you're interviewing your grandpa or something.
I know.
It's just kind of rambly and weird and long, and there are people in my life that if we transcribed it, it'd look an awful like that. Now, those same people are not running the country, let's be clear, but it's sad, really.
They asked him about his car, and he said, you put the pedal to the metal and you rev it up to 4,000 and then car sounds, so I can picture Joe going, vroom, vroom. Really? Are you kidding me?
Well, and,
Corvette guy.
It's kind of a hallmark when you talk to people in advanced age where they're like, and Sally, and then they draw this picture and they want to tell you about, all this irrelevant stuff. And that's kind of how I saw that. It was just a paragraphs of just irrelevance.
Like a stream of consciousness. It's just crazy. I don't know. Yeah. So, and everyone cherry picked, right? I mean, the Republicans cherry picked those aspects of the
are advocates for school choice, and we like to provide parents with resources, tools to equip them and gear them and get them ready to advocate at the Capitol with their elected officials, as well as other elected officials that are at the Capitol, as well as going out into their community and talking to their legislators when they're back home in their community. We just feel that it is so important to give parents a voice and children to have options, no matter what that option can be. It can be traditional homeschooling, virtual homeschooling, virtual schooling, also known as MOCAP. We've got private school, of course, traditional public school. All those options are so important, and it's so important for families to have those options. So when they have those options, we need to make sure that we are advocating and going strong on a state level. So that is what SEAM does at SEAMteam.org. You can find us and find some wonderful resources on how you can come with us and partner with us to advocate for school choice. And because of school choice, of course, yesterday was a big day for Senate Bill 727, where it would expand the Missouri Scholarship. That Missouri Scholarship allows parents, no matter their income level, no matter if they have any speculations or anything, they are able to apply for the Missouri Scholarship, which allows to give them up to $6,000 to go towards their private school of their choice. Also, with that scholarship, no matter where you live in the state of Missouri, the great show me state of Missouri, y'all, that you can apply to any of the selected private schools. Now, there are some requirements, and they do have some rules and terms and conditions, but you can find all that information at showmeoptions.org or SEAMteam.org. Now, Senate Bill 727 is a huge bill, and we hope that individuals continue to advocate for the bill and continue to support it. Unfortunately, last night they were not able to vote on it, and hopefully they will come back today to vote on that bill. So we still have our fingers crossed, and we are still hoping that they will be able to vote on the bill today so that we can get that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful bill passed, and every single family in the great show me state of Missouri, y'all, they will be able to be a part of that wonderful opportunity.
And being there in Kansas City, I mean, when you're talking to folks from mid-Missouri, charter schools still seem like a very foreign concept. We've never had them under state law. We're not allowed to have them. But you've had them in Kansas City, and, of course, they're in St. Louis, and they've been there for some time. This new bill right now would actually add Boone County to the list of places that could have a charter school. Can you talk about, and, you know, I've looked into it before. Generally, I think, so it's still a public school. There's a lottery. Can you talk about how those charter schools operate in Kansas City and what that might look like for Boone County?
Okay, yeah, so absolutely. So it's not just in Boone County that we're trying to get charter schools, and we are also trying to get them in St. Charles County and St. Louis County. And how they operate is they're still public schools. So charter schools, and that's the one thing we also do at SEAM, is to educate families and supporters of school choice on what the specific schools are. Just to go kind of like in a general, just generally, charter schools are public schools, but they have their own like school board, and they still get funding from the government, but because of them being charter schools, they're smaller. So you kind of get more of that like intimacy when it comes to education and coming to the learning atmosphere for students. And the demographics for the charter schools here in Kansas City, it's a wide variety. We have so many different individuals that go to charter schools, and so many supporters that just want to keep charter schools as an option for school choice.
The other change that was made was an increase in public school salary, minimum teacher salary to $40,000. That's proposed in this bill. And the foundation formula, which currently has a multiplier, a factor based on student attendance, that would shift to enrollment. To me, that seems to be an accommodation to the increasing and threatening reality of poor attendance and, truancy in our public schools. How do you feel about some of those compromises?
I think no matter what type of schooling it is, it needs to be that accountability. And to have the increase of not having a strong attendance, it truly breaks my heart. I am originally from South Carolina, and I was a public school student my entire life. And to see that attendance go down, it is definitely something we still need to strongly advocate for, that we get individuals and supporters that support public school to really get into, especially with legislators, to get into their counties and look at these numbers, figure out, okay, we have to come up with a game plan. We have to fix this. Yes, the teachers. How can you teach when you barely are making, the income to be able to provide not only for your family, but to provide the training and the atmosphere to teach these students. So one of the biggest things for me that I think it comes down to accountability. I think that it comes down to, we have to come together and figure out, and be aware that this is an issue. This is a serious issue, because not everybody can pull their kids out of public school and take them to private school or do homeschooling. So accountability, I think, for me, is super, super important, but then also coming together and figuring out how can we truly support these children in public school.
We're talking with Samoy Mainda, and she is with a great organization. You can just think SEAM, that's with a C, CEAM team.org. That's the Children's Education Alliance of Missouri.
We heard the Missouri State Teachers Association, Samoy, talk about against open enrollment and saying it could create competition among school districts in a worst-case scenario for some of those lower-performing rural districts to close. Do you buy into that?
So for me, my opinion is, if there is a school that is not providing the academics, the social academics, the sports, the not having the resources to educate the children, it truly breaks my heart. I feel really, really bad. But at the same time, these students are the next generation. And I feel that students possibly are frustrated because they are not understanding the basics of, math and English, social studies, and science. So when they're in a school that they're struggling in, they're frustrated. They feel they don't have the support, which they do have the support as far as how much they can, how much the teachers, the resources that they have can help them with. But the issue is, at the end of the day, they're frustrated. So when they're frustrated and they're not doing good, low attendance is going to happen. Low graduation rates are going to happen. And it's just going to continue going down these challenging issues for the students. So we need to stop that now and focus on the students now. We can't just be in that little box. We have to look at it from a future perspective. So getting students in schools that have wonderful opportunities for them to give them a great education, I think is a very powerful thing. And I think it would be a wonderful, like I said, it would be coming to the table and figuring out what we can do and how that will work for everybody. I think it is truly, truly a possibility if we focus on the students, because we are in the great show me state of Missouri. Everybody knows us, and we want our students to know that we back them up 110%.
And folks should know, I'm looking at a picture here of you, Samoy, with the governor, and it looks like, what, your 4 children? Is that right?
Yes.
And it's just they just are such charming kids and a wide diversity of ages. And your story is an interesting one because you had enrolled Hannah. I'm not sure which child that is in a virtual school after while in Michigan, and Hannah flourished in virtual school. And so that degree of latitude seemed to really serve your family well.
Yes.
And so you hope to see that kind of flexibility and options and choice for folks in Missouri. That's why you're an advocate here, now that you've moved.
Absolutely. We started off in Michigan, and then we moved here to Missouri. We love it here. And Hannah is the oldest in the picture, and she has a learning disability, which kept her hidden. And we said, we knew how great she was doing with virtual school. And so when we came here to Missouri, that wasn't an option. And I remember I was pregnant with our son, Seth, the little boy that's in the picture, and I don't know what we're going to do at the Capitol, but I'm going to go and advocate, and we're going to get something. We have to get virtual education as an option for parents and families, because I knew what it was doing for my daughter in Michigan. Even though she was in kindergarten. So at the time, we did traditional homeschooling, and when it passed, it was the best feeling, and it gave us like joy that not only my daughter Hannah is going to flourish. Sorry, I get emotional about this, but to know that so many other students and so many other families will have this as an opportunity. And Hannah is flourishing she's at Missouri Virtual Academy, also known as MOVA.
That's beautiful. a 3.5% inflation rate, and that's, or 3.2%. That's still not what it should be. Is that normal going to be acceptable as we head forward into this election season? Because, some of the recent numbers, we talked about it last week, some of the optimism regarding the economy is rising. We're seeing those numbers rise in electoral polls. Troubles me because I think that this is something that should be on the front burner. It's not acceptable to walk out of a grocery store with a couple of plastic bags that used to cost, $20 and now it's $35. That's just not acceptable. People are stretching their credit cards. They have exhausted their savings, according to the economists I've seen. And I just wonder if the other shoe is going to drop after the election.
Yeah, I mean, I think people day to day, they feel it, right? So it wasn't a surprise yesterday to know that it's not cooling as fast as they wanted. I mean, the gas prices have been really terrible lately, and food prices are not coming down.
No.
And so I think the fact that it just wasn't surprising is why we're probably, and there's a lot of other news going on, and the Democrats want to bury it, right? They don't want this to be the top story as they head into an election. So it wasn't surprising, but certainly I think a lot of people are feeling it now. Whether it's going to lead to something more, I think we've been hearing that for a while, and I don't know that, but certainly it's putting the squeeze on people. But I think we're just in such a bizarre situation because this consumer shopping, in December, and they say we're spending like crazy, that we're still, but we're not earning, or our money's not going as far. And so at some point, you think that's going to come to a head where we're just not going to be able to spend like we have been, and your credit card will max out and your savings will be depleted, and that will show in consumer spending. But thus far, it really hasn't. And did you guys talk about the space it out? What do you call that?
The buy it now, pay it later.
Yeah.
We've
and I was getting
that.
ready to mention that. I was like, Stephanie, you missed it yesterday because I know how much you love things like Afterpay.
I hate that kind of stuff because I think it gets people in trouble, just like credit cards do. And I think I call it like virtual layover. Remember when you used to have put it, or what is it?
Layaway.
Layaway. Yeah,
it's a layaway.
By the time I was shopping, layaway wasn't a thing, but I remember as a kid, I knew about it, right? That you could take an item and walk to the back and but I think did you have to make all the installments before they gave it to you, or did you get it first? When you
How did layaway
I think it was
work?
called layaway because you didn't get it.
You're
until
making payments
you
on it.
That's
That's
aside.
They had
It's so weird.
They had Christmas clubs where you would pay ahead, and that way you had much to spend at a given store, and they may give you some incentive. Remember that, John? Some of the big department stores had that.
The banks used to do it too.
And to me, that made perfect sense. I mean, it's showing some discipline, some personal household financial discipline, and now there is none. This is where the Democrats, I'm telling you folks, I question whether Donald Trump's going to win this election. I really do. Because Joe Biden's already beaten that drum. Tax the rich, more handouts to the non-rich, tax the rich, more handouts to the non-rich in one way or another. That's going to resonate because about the time over the summer, people's money is going to run out. The credit card limits are going to be met. And I think they're going to make hay on it. That's my prediction. Mark it, Hannah. It's going to happen. What do we talk about 710? We're going to unpack that education bill again.
Yeah,
we're
there's
talking
actually
education.
some good stuff in there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk on Susan Pendergrass at 8:08 and Tyler Schwartze from Conservation at 7:35. Lots coming up on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
When I dial the telephone,
talented musician. He had a lot of hits, including hits from
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing, yeah.
Oh, I love that movie. What song did he have in Dirty Dancing?
He did.
What was the name of the love song?
Oh, it was
Hungry Eyes.
Yeah,
oh,
Hungry.
Yeah.
Hungry
Exactly.
Eyes.
I would just like to point out that
Please
Stephanie got the answer to that before the old guys did. And
Yep.
you guys were just talking smack about how
Well,
Stephanie
because
and I wouldn't know who this was.
Dirty Dancing is a gal
Just
movie.
pointing that out.
Dirty Dancing is my wife loves Dirty Dancing and the Patrick Swayze and the dancing and it's a beautiful.
I've even seen you guys do the famous lift from the movie.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We do that
Is
frequently.
that the last Zimmer Christmas party?
Yeah, we did at the last. Yeah. You haven't seen anything yet. Just wait. Wait till you see the tango scene out of the.
Oh no!
Out of that's one of my favorite scenes in all of moviedom. Is Schwartzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis? What was that? True Lies, where they do the tango at the end of the. Oh, what a sexy romantic dance the tango is.
Speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis,
beautiful dance.
Did you see that they announced they're going to do a sequel to the Freaky Friday movie?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think that'll be so
Yeah,
fun.
fun. The tango.
Lindsay Lohan will bring her grandkids with her, right?
Yeah, there you go.
We have a couple of very good friends who are they go to dance competitions and stuff. You know, they do ballroom dancing and they do all kinds of great dancing. I haven't asked them if they do the tango. That is a dance, man. If a guy wants to get a gal, it's either bring a dog to the park, right? Learn to cook, and or cook a nice dinner for a woman, right? Dancing. If a guy dances well, is that a magnet, ladies? Isn't that a good thing? If a guy likes, even if he tries, good. No.
Yes.
What
if he's just like into music, I think.
What if he tries, but he's not a good dancer?
It's an ick.
Sort of not good?
No.
No.
I took there's you can take ballroom dance lessons here in town and in Jefferson City. Yeah. I took them there in Jefferson City before my wedding, and I love to waltz. Waltzing, I think it's
beautiful.
Yeah.
Dance. Yes.
It's my fave.
Mr. Bell, I think every year at the Zimmer Christmas party
tries to waltz.
Well, that and he
loves
always
to dance.
tries to, tease Stephanie that he's going to go ask one of our big bosses to slow dance, and she gets super embarrassed.
He grew up Catholic, okay, and he's got 13. His mother is the oldest of 13.
Wow.
They all got married, and he was on the older side of the cousins. So he just grew up going to wedding after wedding after wedding, and so it just never, you go to a German Catholic wedding in, around mid-Missouri, and it just
dance in the hog trough.
Yes, we had that at our wedding. You just learn to dance, and so I learned later that he was like most of his classmates' first slow dance, because in 8th grade all the boys were embarrassed, and he was just tapping on one shoulder after another, saying, "Let's dance."
So his life was a dance-a-thon, really, going to all the weddings. That's great story. Well, that's good. At least guys ought to probably get out there and try, right? That's rather than be a bump on a log. Good idea.
Yes.
Let's talk about avoiding being a bump on a log when it comes to education. There's Stephanie, I hope we can break down this bill. It's an important thing for you all to, as this has, first passage last night, right?
Perfected. It was perfected. Second.
The first step was climbed. Another step needs to be climbed today, right?
They'll third read it, yeah. And I think the work was done yesterday. Really. And so we can just expect, I think, they're going to get the fiscal note back, and unless there's something crazy, I think they're going to kick it over to the House. But there was some cool stuff in there. And one thing that we haven't touched on yet today is I think there's going to be some, and I don't know if this came in as part of the Democrat compromise or if it was in there before, but there are going to be some incentives for school districts to go a full 5 days.
Right.
And we've had a lot of discussion here, and I have been terrified that some of our districts in mid-Missouri would go to a 4-day week. Now, it would only cover, I believe, charter cities and then cities that had an excess population of 30,000, so it wouldn't protect me in Ashland, but especially, I do think it's a step in the right direction to say schools, it's better for kids to be in the schools traditionally a 5-day work week. But it doesn't affect a lot of our rural communities have already chosen a 4-day school day.
A couple of them in Boone County, even, including Hauswirth.
So it wouldn't really, it wouldn't penalize them for having done so.
When the discussion centers around the length of the school week, I think they make a mistake by talking about it's important so parents don't have to account for care for that 5th day. What about just the rigor of having an extended, a 5-day, responsibility when you're going to be in school, structured time, you're responsible for studies.
Yeah. I mean, we all know those people who have trouble showing up 5 days a week to work, right? And that can be bred early on.
There you go.
And you're right. I think, and we talk about hours of instruction and all of these different things. And so I think, and they talk about we hear a lot about learning loss over the summer, but on a smaller scale, don't you have learning loss they have so many days off anyway.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Holidays, in January, my kids went 4 days to school. So think, if we're talking about over the summer loss, then why wouldn't you see that same loss over a 3 or 4 day weekend that you're getting quite frequently? And I think I know Herzog came in and Show Me has been doing research on the 4-day week. It's kind of a newer phenomenon. So although they do have some data that says, hey, 4-day work weeks or 4-day school weeks don't necessarily help. There's not any data necessarily either that it hurts, but it's really not been implemented long enough to have the true data that you need.
And here's what people have to keep in mind. It is very popular. It is growing in popularity, and it's not just smaller schools. We're seeing larger schools doing it.
So now, social media.
Some may be, but
so's gambling.
Bottom line is more schools are doing it. Harrisburg is doing it.
But they're doing it for spending reasons, typically, right? Like transportation, it reduces costs.
They're doing it to recruit and retain teachers.
And they want, and the parents seem to like it. But in the Kingdom City, North Callaway is doing it. Jess Piper on Twitter keeps talking about this very
quit
issue.
Saying her name.
She who shall not be named.
She keeps talking about the 4-day week and the Republicans. Let's point out Jay Nixon, a Democrat governor, was the one that signed that bill into law. Republicans rarely bring that up. The bill was sponsored by a Republican, but it was a Democratic governor that did sign that.
I'm absolutely against it.
But more and more schools are doing it. It seems to be popular and.
Did you see what happened in the St. Joe district over there? The school board in St. Joe rejected the idea of it just within the last week or two.
That's true, and they did. But again, I'd point out that more and more schools, especially in our area, are going to it. So I don't expect Columbia or Jefferson City to go to it. But the smaller schools seem to like it, and in the rural areas, they definitely seem to be going to it.
And there was also big news in the state capitol yesterday on the House Ethics Committee. Dean Plocker was finally allowed to testify on his own behalf, had his lawyers with him, spent quite a bit of time, I think they said 90 minutes or so, in the committee hearing. And then the committee hearing continued well into the evening after his testimony. I think they're set to meet either today or later this week again. So I know a lot of people are kind of anxious, and I'm sure Dean Plocker is anxious for this to get concluded and for some sort of, because it's all been behind closed doors thus far. And so presumably they will either take an action or take no action, and we'll learn something. And so I think they're now suddenly, it seems like, kind of in a hurry to wrap this up.
Well, and it's one of those things, too. By the way, there is an ethics committee meeting that's scheduled for 5:00 p.m. or upon adjournment tonight, so that when they say that, it's probably going to be closer to 6. But you are right, and that is behind closed doors, unless the person, I've covered those a few times, and they can let you in there for the roll call as a reporter, but then as soon as they go to the actual hearing, you have to leave the room, and they typically can't say anything other than, they had a hearing, basically. The chairman is the one, or woman is the one that talks. There was one lawmaker, and if it's the lawmaker in question, that person can request it be open. And Warren Love, when he was under investigation for some comments he made about very controversial comments, he did want the media there, but we'll see. And they still have to do a report. Until a report is issued, none of them can comment at all. None of the committee members can comment. That's just the way it is.
Will you bring us up to date on the missing MU student? There was some video footage released by the Nashville police. We covered this yesterday. There's a missing MU student. Brian, the latest.
The latest on that, and the television stations in Nashville last night, I actually watched all three of them on my phone at 10 o'clock. I wanted to see how they covered it. They really did a fine job. This has been the lead story on the Nashville television news for the last 3 nights. They are using divers and helicopters. They've got guys going into the water in basically the Cumberland River. They're diving in there. They have not found him. They've also been using helicopters. They have surveillance video that they have released. It's hard to see Riley Strain. I mean, you can see him. He's crossing the street. You know, he appears to... They said in some news outlets saying he appears to be stumbling. I'm not going to say he's stumbling, but he appears to be confused. Looks like he's not sure where he is, really, and he's in an unfamiliar place. They searched the riverbank. They've used a helicopter. He's 6'6", and he is got blue eyes and light brown hair. I have a photo of him, Randy, 93.9theeagle.com. MUPD is also investigating, and they want anyone to call them with information at 573-882-7201. The other thing I would point out, the mom and dad were interviewed on camera last night, and the mother says that this young man, this Strain, was scheduled to graduate in May, a business major from Springfield, that he texts or calls her all the time, and she's just heartbroken. You can see the fear in her eyes. But I will tell you, News Channel 5 in Nashville had a story I didn't see anywhere else, and they had the father on TV last night. And he said flat out, Randy and Stephanie, that there were 50, I'm paraphrasing here, but I watched it. He said there were 50 fraternity brothers that were in that bar, this Luke Bryan bar, with them. And he said not one of them went out to check on him. Not one went, and he was not happy.
No.
And they showed
fraternity brothers.
That's what he said. Now, I don't know if that means fraternity brothers here at Mizzou. It didn't say, or if he's talking about fraternity brothers in general. But that soundbite I thought was very powerful, and I would have used that soundbite if I'd been the reporter. That's powerful.
It is.
But he said that they did not go check on him, and in that video that you saw, that he's basically walking across a crosswalk, and I don't see anybody with him other than some bystanders that are near him. So they've not found him.
I do think like phones have kind of led to that behavior because everyone just relies on their phone. And so and I think about my days in college, and I remember, studying abroad and being in a foreign country and not having a phone. It was you always were checking on
some leftover truffles. Someone gave us a box of truffles at home. And
because they know how much you love leftovers.
But they're great. And there's dark and milk and different.
Ooh, is there white chocolate?
So none of that fake chocolate stuff. And so every day when we dip into the jar, you never know what you're going to get. Is it a milk, a dark, a white? You never know. So what's hot with Hannah?
Well, this topic is maybe the only topic I can think of that the Wake Up fam hates more than Taylor Swift, and it's the royal family.
Oh, pretty close. Yeah. Everyone's going to go make their oatmeal now.
Yeah, so Stephanie and I have been down the rabbit hole this week. Pretty much all day long, we're sending each other tweets about the latest update in the conspiracy theory about Princess Kate Middleton. Of course, earlier in the week, we briefly covered that there was a photo of Kate Middleton that was posted with their 3 kiddos, and there were a ton of Photoshop mistakes. Oh. And the whole, prior to that, Kate Middleton underwent this mystery surgery and spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and she has not been spotted since, really, has not been seen in public. So the conspiracy theory is that she's missing, or that, the more extreme conspiracy theory is that the royal family killed her. Yeah. There's also a conspiracy that Prince William is having an affair with a lady who looks a lot like Kate Middleton. And one of the photos that were posted on the internet in the last couple days to supposedly prove that Kate Middleton is okay, it's sort of like the back of her head. And the royal family's going, see, she's fine. But some of the internet sleuths are saying that this actually looks like the alleged mistress of Prince William and not Kate. And there has been a statement released about the Photoshop disaster.
By her.
So
allegedly.
But no one believes that the princess is doing her own photoshopping.
Exactly.
Let me just pull that up. No, she is not doing that. And then
How do we know?
No, but
she may be a talented individual.
They've superimposed a magazine cover over the photo that they released, and it's actually her face from a shot on. It's not Vogue, but it's some other magazine cover, and it's clearly they took her off of that magazine cover and plopped her down amongst these kids. So whose body is that? I mean, it gets more bizarre by the day. And then now they're saying there was the photo from the car is completely fabricated because they're
or it could be this mistress. Yeah. That's the photo I'm talking about. And basically the internet is just saying, hey, royal family, if you want these rumors to stop, just show us Kate Middleton. And they can't.
It's like a hostage situation.
Yes. It's crazy.
So like the Beatles and Paul is dead.
Yeah, well, I think about it in this way. There's a lot of conspiracies regarding the royal family. And when I was in law school, I had this evidence professor, and he said, what would you do? Would you go after this guy if his wife died in the bathtub and you had no other evidence at all? None. And everyone's like, well, no, you could. How could you prosecute that guy? Could have been an accident. And they're like, okay, same scenario, but his last wife also died in the bathtub. And everyone's like, get him. And what he said was, you know what the moral of that story is? One free drowned wife in the bathtub. And I thought, oh my gosh,
a little bit later. And speaking about things that go on in the great outdoors, like hail and skunks on the road, that's Hannah's big concern. We're talking with Tyler Schwartze with the Missouri Conservation Federation, and not the Department of Conservation, but the Conservation Federation. We'll find out about what that means. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, first of all, tell us what the distinction between the Missouri Department of Conservation and the Missouri Conservation Federation. Tell us the difference.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So we're a citizen-based organization. We were founded back in 1935. Conservationists from all over Missouri, they came together to form our organization to take politics out of conservation. And ultimately, we helped start the Conservation Commission, which turned into what we all know and love as the Missouri Department of Conservation. So we're a nonprofit citizen group that supports state agencies like MDC, DNR, state parks, all the different other groups. But we also advocate for over 100 other nonprofit groups, what we call affiliates. So we're the voice for Missouri outdoors is our tagline. So we like to bring people together, collaborate on issues. We work on advocacy in the Capitol and other issues that come out across Missouri.
What is your website so folks can get in touch with you and perhaps get involved?
Confedmo.org, CONFEDMO.org. And we're a $35 a month member-based organization that people can join us. We get a great magazine that we put out bi-monthly, and we're all over across Missouri with great events and supporting many initiatives. Share the Harvest is one of our great programs that we're proud of with the deer season, and a lot of other youth involvement as well across the state.
Now, I hear that you are working on some invasive species legislation. I know cicadas are back this year. Is this cicada related or something else?
So the bill that was heard in Senate Ag yesterday was to halt the sale of 5 invasive plants. So there's over 140 invasive plants in Missouri, but we are focusing on 5 particular ones, and one includes the calorie pear. So when I heard you all talking about that yesterday, I was like, I got to tell them about this. This hearing's going on, and there's a bill been filed in the Senate, which is Senate Bill 1281, filed by Senator Bernskeder, and then a companion bill in the House, which is 1242, filed by Bruce Sassman. And so both of these bills are working on these 5 different species, one being the calorie pear, and ceasing the sale of them. We understand that people have these trees, but we want to stop the sale, and so we can spread these non-invasive, non-native trees.
Hannah's our resident ag major, so for someone who doesn't know anything about ag, like how are we threatened by a what did you say, calorie pear?
Yeah, and the Bradford pear, and so they're kind of synonymous when you talk about those 2 different ones, but they're out competing other of our native grasses and trees, and so they're very harmful. There was a guy actually in the hearing yesterday, a farmer, he showed the thorns from these calorie pears and how they were getting in his tractor tires and stuff, and so they're a nuisance tree that, may look pretty for a few weeks during the spring, but ultimately they're taken away from other resources in the state or the ground.
Well, and not only are they harmful to other plant species, but they're also harmful to my nose, and they are awful.
Now wait a minute. Hannah, I need you to post the picture I just sent you. I was driving down my home street yesterday, approaching my home, and separated from this beautiful lot of beautiful blooming trees, which I think are the ones that you were impugning right now.
Do they smell like death? Because if they did,
my windows were up, but they look beautiful. It looked like a Christmas wonderland with everything. It looks like trees flocked with snow. It was beautiful.
And dead fish.
I don't know. And it's a beautiful thing. No, I understand Bradford pears. But now, okay, so I have to ask you, Tyler, and this is a bit of a political question, but let's be honest about it. The Department of Conservation introduced, serratia lespedeza. Multiflora. There's things that the Conservation Department has themselves introduced over the years. Does the Conservation Federation act more as a watchdog or more as a rubber stamp on conservation policy? Or both? Or neither?
That's actually a great question because, again, we're a citizen-based organization that we watch over the legislature, the state agencies, and all of the above, because we are a group of citizens that our voice comes together to, we don't always agree with agencies or federal agencies or legislators and stuff. And so that's the beauty of the Federation, that we're out there advocating on citizens' behalf on all sorts of issues, because there are things that happen that we don't agree on, and so that's where we kind of stand up and try and work together. You all know this just as well as I do. We have to collaborate, come together, and bring people together to bring, to figure out the best situation that we can and for what we're dealt. So that's the beauty of Missouri, because we have those 1/8 of 1% sales tax, and that 1/10 of 1% at state parks. We have free state parks, free boat ramps. We are so blessed in Missouri to have so many wonderful resources that are at our hand and our disposal.
Well, and Tyler, we're getting texts off the texter at 874-9390 from folks like Jean. They're asking, what is a good small tree for a front yard that I can plant close to my house that the roots won't damage the foundation?
I think if you go to any kind of native tree, your oaks are good trees that have nut-bearing fruit for the wildlife. There's different ones, that are out there that when you go to your local nurseries and you ask them, what's a native tree that's good, and tell them how much shade you have, tell them the different kind of landscape you have. There's professionals out there that'll be really good to explain what exactly you want to plant in your trees given the situation.
Another listener texts and asks, what about, and in my front yard, I have a dying ash tree. Tyler, before we went off, when I was promoting this, producer Hannah thought I said the other word, not ash, but the other word. And I said, play it back. And she said, no, it doesn't fit my narrative. So there you go. But the dying ash trees are a problem with ash borers. Anything can be done about that? Is it just sort of, part of an ash's life, or, is there anything that can be done?
Yeah, so the emerald ash borer has certainly been a nuisance, not in Missouri, but all over the Midwest and beyond. And the biggest thing that I could suggest is to cut them down. They can be dangerous. The limbs that are hanging over certainly are a problem. And it's unfortunate, the amount of ash trees in Missouri and all the benefits that it produces for natives, and it's just it's a sad thing that's happened in Missouri. We certainly hate to see them, but again, I guess my take-home thing is try and get rid of them as soon as you can, so you don't get hurt.
All right, sounds good. Now, Hannah, you're worried about dead animals on the road, right?
Yeah, it's one of those soapbox moments that I had last week. How come we're not talking about this moment? There have been more dead skunks in Montauk County on the side of the road than I've ever seen anywhere. And I didn't know, is there an uptick in skunk populations? Are they getting stupider and just getting hit by more cars? Is there a deeper conspiracy going on here? We've had similar questions about armadillo population in Missouri before. What's going on with the skunks and the armadillo?
The reason for the skunks is it's their breeding season. I always think of the first time of spring is coming when you start seeing those skunks hit, because they're out traveling right now, and they don't have a lot of predators, as you can imagine, because they're stinky, but they can't see very well. And so they're out there just kind of wandering around, and is why they get hit a lot of times on the road. And so not having a lot of predators, being a slow-moving mammal, they just they're out there wandering around, and especially because of the breeding season right now.
We're talking to Tyler Schwartze with the Conservation Federation of Missouri here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Tyler, talk to us about the permitting process. One, we've seen some prices go up, especially on deer tags. And two, a lot of people don't realize the Department of Conservation has kind of its own funding stream with the conservation sales tax, don't they?
Yeah, so first of all, on the tags, we saw an increase this past year, but we hadn't seen an increase on many of those tags over 10, 15, some 20 years. So it'd been a long time. And it ties into that tax that you just mentioned. And every Missourian pays 1/8 of 1%. And so we have the funding available to have great resources, the educational programs that we have in Missouri schools, our National Archery Schools program, so many different things that are out there that get people connected to nature. And our Department of Conservation does a great job of with so many managing resources in deer and turkey. And we all have opinions. We all are avid hunters, outdoorsmen, people, different things. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that our taxes go towards supporting those efforts and science-based decision making. And so I trust the department for doing what they do and making sure that we have all those great resources at our disposal, because we all love deer hunting and turkey hunting in Missouri. And so it's an important thing that we have. And you cross state lines, there's not those taxes and the free opportunities that we have in other places.
And I guess, Tyler, we should mention, I have some great deer friends in the conservation department here. They do a fabulous job. Their research is unbelievable. And it's one of the most highly sought after positions in the whole United States, to be a wildlife biologist or, almost any of the positions in the department, because it's a fabulous department. Now, before we let you go, I guess you guys are friends with the Missouri Prairie Foundation and GrowNative.org, right? You advocate that, don't you?
Yeah, correct. The Missouri Invasive Plant Council and the Prairie Foundation are great advocates for this working on the cease the sale that we talked about. And I mentioned we have over 100 affiliated organizations.
Right.
Certainly the Prairie Foundation is one of them, and great friends and supporters for all things native to Missouri.
Yeah, Sandy says grow the wild plum. The native wild plum is a beautiful tree and native. All right. Well, Tyler Schwartze, we thank you for texting us yesterday and being on with us today. You're welcome anytime we need a push to improve, because after all, us conservatives know about conservation, right? That's the word. That's the foundational word. Confedmo.org. Confedmo.org, the website. Thanks for being with us. Good luck with that invasive bill.
Thank you very much. Have a great week.
All right. You too. Thanks much. Yeah, isn't that funny? Conservationists are always accused of
spit it out, which appeared to be the foot of a rat with fur and claws attached.
Oh.
Said his stomach just heaved. He got sick right there in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Olive Garden says we have no reason to believe there's any validity to the claim. Howie said he had to get a tetanus shot to treat the cut in his mouth and drop the foot off at the police station. And a former worker at Olive Garden says he's on the money. She said the salad was frequently contaminated and not washed properly, and they had to pull caterpillars and other bugs out of the salad mix. So back to the question to the waiter, there's a fly in my soup, and the response would be, I guess there, don't worry, the spider on your breadsticks will probably eat it. So now you know the rest of that story.
I hate when you tell these stories and people are probably eating breakfast. Although, if you're trying to intermittently fast and you were feeling a bit hungry, I'm sure you're not feeling very hungry
It
now.
helps with the diet efforts, no doubt about that.
That's right. And bugs have protein. Rat feet, I'm not so sure about.
I think we eat well, there's some maximum allowable amount of insect parts in peanut butter, isn't there? I think
I
so.
thought it was hot dogs.
Bread, everything, yeah.
Hot dogs? I hadn't heard that.
I think John's right. I'm pretty sure it's anything, any food product.
That's disturbing. But it's actually a good thing.
The USDA makes their big bucks.
Like I like to say, it helps exercise your immune system. People that are kids that grow up in the city don't have nearly the robust immune systems as country kids.
And I do Jefferson City publishes that in the newspaper, like the reports of the inspectors and who has like critical violations versus like minor violations. And I actually do like to take a look at it and make sure that the places I'm going are,
I know Springfield does that too. Does Columbia do that? I don't think so. I haven't
seen Columbia's.
Maybe we could ask Mike Murphy if he'd add a section to Como Buzz on that. Publish that.
Probably would.
But then I think how many of our home kitchens would pass the inspection, right?
And anybody who's worked in the back of the house in the food business, well, enough said.
Oh man. That's why I like the open air, where you see the open air back of the kitchen, right there in the front of the house.
Like a chef's table,
the back of the house. Yeah, I love that. It's great. I mean, and then, we love watching the guys and gals work. So, well, boy, John, I don't know. Thanks for sharing that this morning. I was going
no problem.
I was going to munch on a nice, I was thinking even about a Pop-Tart. I haven't done a Pop-Tart forever, but I was thinking about it. But I don't think I'm thinking about it now.
Not no mo.
It's too soft and chewy, too much. It sort of looks like a lasagna in a way. It's a flat lasagna.
Yeah, that's probably a good comparison.
Yeah.
I have a protein Pop-Tart in my desk if you want it.
No, you sent me a video of that the other day, and you told me this gets... She's like, the texture is better when you microwave it. Here, watch this video. And then, tries to fold it over. And she was like, maybe I
coming in tonight, potentially. We'll talk with Brian Hauswirth about that a little bit later at the 8:35 break. Susan Pendergrass now joins us from Show Me Institute, knows about all things education, Director of Education Policy there. How you doing, Susan?
I'm doing great, Randy. How are you?
Are you celebrating the perfection of the Senate bill that went from, 7 pages to 32 pages to 76 pages, now 150 pages, that purports to expand school choice?
I'm celebrating parts of it, and I'm not celebrating other parts of it. Yes.
I think we're doing the same.
It is a long one to wake up and read, but yes.
Yeah.
They've been working hard, and I know that there's been a lot of work this session to try to get, some very different sides to come together. And what I think ended up happening is this kind of omnibus thing where they threw everything in. And so there are parts of it I really do like, and then there's parts I don't really care for. Okay, well, let's talk about some positive movement if that bill, in fact, passes and then the House passes. I mean, how do you feel about expanding the Missouri Scholarship Tax Credit Program to pretty much everyone except for it's income limited, it's means tested, but how does that feel? It is, but it does cover families of 4, making up to about 170,000 now. So it really is a very broad expansion. And I think that's great. That's something we've talked about a lot here. I think in an ideal world, the legislature would have funded it. What they did instead was punt it back to the organizations that grant the scholarships have to raise the money through donations, which are tax credits, but you still have to raise the money. Just last week, Alabama became another one of the states like Iowa, like Oklahoma, like Indiana, like Arkansas that passed a similar universal scholarship program, but the state's paying for it. And so in my mind, it would have been, I'm really glad that they got rid of all the restrictions. That's something we're for. But if they believe in the program, they should have funded it because there's some very expensive things in this bill. And this morning it'll be going to fiscal oversight. And it's a shame that they didn't decide to at least fund the first. They raised the limit they can raise to $75 million, but it would have been nice if they had funded, say, the first $25 million at least in scholarships. Would you explain that more? Because I think people are just assuming that if this passes, I mean, based on what we were talking about this morning, I asked Stephanie, what is this tax scholarship thing? Credit? Does that mean a refundable tax credit? You just get if you don't pay taxes, you get a $6,000 check. If you pay $8,000 in taxes, now it's only $2,000, and you can send the kid to work. That. To me, I'm just a knuckle drag. I'm just a knuckle dragger. I'm a simple man, Susan, and I just want things simple. What is this raising money to get a? What are the kid? Do parents have to then sell Girl Scout cookies and hams from some fundraiser? What is that all about? Okay, so neither of those two. So what happens is there's 6 organizations in the state. One, the Springfield area is called the Herzog Foundation. The Herzog Foundation raises the money. So let's say they raise $8 million, they can give out $8 million in scholarships to the newly eligible kids. But the foundations and the Archdiocese in Kansas City, the Archdiocese in St. Louis, right now there's 6 of these organizations. They literally have to go out to folks and say, will you please donate to the scholarship program? And then if I decide to donate, $5,000 to the Herzog Foundation for scholarships, I can take $5,000 off of my Missouri tax bill. So I get the tax credit as a donor, and companies can donate and individuals can donate and take it right off of your tax bill. So that's great for donors because it used to just be like, a deduction, but now it's a credit. But they still have to raise the money. And we've had so many states in the last 2 years who have gone to, like I said, Iowa, to a universal scholarship program like this, but they funded it. And if you think about the scholarship being $6,500, the spending per student in Missouri is like $15,000. So it still represents less public money than if that child stays in the public school system. But I will continue to work on this in the coming years. Like it's time to publicly fund that scholarship program.
So let's get to what you really don't like in the bill. I know, I know there was an incentive in there for a 5-day school week. I liked to see that, but I know there were significant compromises made. And I know, as Randy pointed out, I think the bill went from original 22 pages to 153. So what else got shoved in there yesterday that maybe you hope might fall away before final passage?
Well, this is something that you're not reading in a lot of the headlines, but they changed the funding formula. And the funding formula change is $700 million. You're going to do it 10% at a time at $70 million. And what they did is they changed it from funding districts based on student attendance to based on student enrollment. And that is just like this kind of complicated issue. DESE hired somebody, Bruce Baker of the University of Miami, to do an analysis of the funding formula. He found about 10 things that needed to be changed, and they just picked one out. So what happens is, I've been talking a lot this last year, we have a problem with chronic absenteeism. It's doubled since the pandemic happened. Kids are not showing up to school, and it's something we need to work really hard on. But instead, they decided to no longer fund based on average daily attendance, but to fund on the number of students enrolled, whether they show up or not. And, you know, whatever you, like the 5-day school week, whatever you put money towards is what you incentivize, right? So we incentivize kids being enrolled versus kids attending. And that's just a complicated thing. And the Missouri funding formula needs a lot of improvements. And to just pluck one out that costs $700 million without fixing the rest of it, that is something that until yesterday, I hadn't heard about that one being included, and it slipped in. It's very expensive. It's like changing the tax code in a one small way that without rethinking the whole thing. So I don't love that. It does raise teachers' salary minimums from 25 all the way up to 40, which is significant. And you know, we talk a lot, or at the state level, they talk a lot about local control. And some of the small rural districts, you know, they pay an amount less than $40,000 to their newest teachers because that's what the district prioritizes, what they can afford. And now they're being told they raise it up. If you raise up the minimum, you raise up everybody above them. So that's actually pretty expensive too. I don't know if the state's going to commit to paying for that going forward. And then this kind of comes back to like, if we're going to pay for these major expensive things, why didn't we just pay for the scholarship program, which is a weird kind of cost savings. I'm not looking for cost savings, but, you know, it gives families $6,500 instead of their full $15,000. So I don't like the funding formula change. I understand how the sausage gets made, right? You have to take the good with the bad, but that's not something that I would have been really supportive of. And the teacher salaries, I really think, is a local issue for school boards and superintendents to set teacher salaries rather than the state saying it has to be this.
That's Dr. Susan Pendergrass, an expert in education and the education guru at Show Me Institute today on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Susan, the way the bill came out of the House and went over to the Senate, there was about $80 million in there for transportation services. Presumably, if kids are going to go to a neighboring district, they're going to have to get there somehow. And I know the Missouri Teachers Association has been a big opponent of this from the get-go. And their talk is saying, you know, consolidation, may even force some rural school districts to close. Your take on that?
We do have a lot of very small rural districts in other places. You know, we used to have 100,000 school districts in this country. Now we have 13,500. Missouri is one of the states that still has a large number, including some very, very small ones. It doesn't necessarily always make the most financial sense because you have to have a superintendent and a principal, and there's a lot of layers and paperwork. But what I believe, you know, 30 years now, students in Minnesota have been able to pick a school in any district, a public school in any district, and they still have small rural districts. It doesn't mean that they're going to go away because you let kids pick a different district, but we don't give a lot of flexibility. You know, we have high schools with 20 students in them, and the likelihood that high school is going to be able to offer everything that like a suburban high school can, or everything that every student who shows up there wants to learn and study is not very high. So I think we need to build in flexibility for our families. I've heard people say that kids in rural areas don't need calculus, and I think that's like, of course they do. Some of them want to be engineers or pilots. So I think we need to open up and have more flexibility and start to think about these kids who are going to be going out into the workforce in 2050, that, you know, the idea of hanging on to our small rural high schools and the mascot and the football games is nostalgic, and that's wonderful from the last century. But our kids are going to be going out into the workforce with kids who had very different experiences, and what we need is just flexibility in that system.
You know, Susan, we talked with Samoy Mainda from SEAM Team, the Children's Educational Alliance, and she talked about her special needs child, Hannah, had benefited so enormously from virtual training and now is in the virtual academy. So I think there's a lot of these options that it only impedes the development and the advancement and the perfection of these types of programs if we slow walk it. You know, I can think of a lot of folks in rural communities that would love to have a very nimble, easily accessed, technology replete. Kids are visually adapted and adept these days. There's just so many ways that you can answer the rural versus urban suburban question, in my opinion. Well, how about you?
That's right. So Florida's always had this, or not always, but for decades, has had a very flexible approach to public education, and they have multiple scholarship programs. And in rural areas, I've read about a family who has a child with a hearing disability, and they enrolled a child in 2 days in school. They have a day with a occupational therapist, and then they have some equipment in their home. They took the different scholarship programs and they crafted a plan that works for their child. And of course, Missouri families in rural areas with similar needs would like to have a similar option available, right? And what you see is, too, when you open it up and we put more money into the hands of parents, the supply side kind of comes along. So if you say, well, there's no services for deaf children in this community, there will be if parents are empowered with the money to spend, right? So you see the response to that. Certainly during the pandemic, so many great virtual options popped up because families needed them. And so now how can we take advantage of that and not, expect that to just go away? We're all going to go back to the way it was in 2018. So I know the Missouri legislature, there's a lot of good folks in there working on this who understand it, who get it, but you got to work within the system you have. And we have a very entrenched, capital public education, capital S system that's hard to work against sometimes, but progress is being made.
There's an article that I was up late last night researching for our segment. Nice. And we have to go and talk about the morning bell, because if I don't do the morning bell, Stephanie will get mad at me, and you don't want Stephanie mad at you. She's an attorney, She could file some action against me. It's this story about academics at the university level are embracing new deficit framing concept to justify unprepared, underperforming, or immature students. Could we borrow a little of your time after the break to just talk about this in the context of our underperforming Missouri schools, which I know you chronicle very, very deeply and detailed on the Show Me site. Can we talk about that? Because it troubles me. It troubles me. It seems like accommodating mediocrity. So I'd like to discuss that. Do you mind after the bottom of the hour news break? Okay. Thanks very, very much. Appreciate it. We'll be back and talk about that issue with Susan Pendergrass. This is an underappreciated issue.
for the markets. The S&P closed up 1.12%, NASDAQ up even more, just above 1.5%, and then the Dow closed up 0.61%. It seemed like technology and communication services were leading the gainers, while utilities sector was a big loser yesterday. We've got futures this morning as the Wall Street Journal refreshes. Dow is up, S&P up just a hair. NASDAQ down just slightly as the market sets to open this morning. Now, Hannah actually keyed me in on this article, and we're going to take the Morning Bell local this morning. Really excited about this. Stevens College, home right here in Columbia, Missouri, is set to launch a groundbreaking Women in Trades program. Now, we talk a lot, and we've got Rankin down in Ashland coming in, and we talk a lot about trades and how we need more people in trades, how there's a huge demand.
State tech.
State tech is a really good one as well. And we've got Rolla. I mean, we've got a lot of really good schools. The problem is we don't have enough people going in there. And I think we're doing a better job right now, but we've kind of got I think we had a lull maybe about when I went to college, right? Of folks, they said, everyone go to your 4-year school. And I think we're learning that that's not what we needed to be telling
It's not
people.
everyone's cup of tea. And societally, it's good to have vocations as professions, just like 4-year college professions are professions.
Well, and for a lot of people, it's a lot more lucrative to become really good at a trade.
Right.
And, you can come out of a good 4-year education and work at a bank for $30,000, or you can be a master welder and make $80,000 coming out of school or more.
With very little schooling.
I need a new deck. John and I are going to go into the deck building business.
And
Holy
it's
cow.
tough. I mean, anybody who's tried to get a quote or book work, especially since the pandemic, that just amplified the problem. But yeah, the demand is there and the supply just isn't. And so, but Stevens College, let's get back to what they're doing. Women in trades, they're saying not only is, do we need more people in trades, but there's a significant gap. And there's not that many women in trades. So let's get this new program going and encourage women to get into the skills trades.
Will they have Christy Nome in a plumber's outfit or electrician's outfit doing the keynote speech as they open that?
I doubt it, but
Kinda
they are
like Joe the plumber.
But they're talking specifically about industries like construction, carpentry, heavy highway construction, and more. Of course, we've got the big I-70 project coming that's going to require a lot of folks in trades. And so I think I love seeing, and we saw this a little bit with Lincoln University, John, with President Mosley, and he was getting into nursing and law enforcement. So I think when our universities listen to our business community and know the world around them and start adapting their programming to what we actually need, I think we are vastly better off. And so kudos to Stevens for seeing this opportunity and capitalizing on it.
I think it's a good idea. We certainly have a real gap there. There's just such a demand, and it's difficult to get, people to bid for more than 3 months out. It's not going to happen. So it's good to hear.
And I forget what they called these, they didn't call them manly trades, but that's what the article focuses on. I also think we need more
about where academics are basically, well, this is a story out of the College Fix. Trending, academics embrace new, quote, deficit framing, close quote, concept to justify unprepared, underperforming, or immature students. In other words, there isn't a problem with students entering college grossly unprepared. The problem is college is too challenging. Those that say otherwise are colonizing subjugators. It's more of this woke sort of accommodation of underperformance. And look, it's not good for the individual. It's not good for society in general. And this isn't a recent thing I've heard. I've talked with professors and, teachers and deans at schools that say, boy, we're doing a lot of remedial education at the 101 level in college. Okay, how does that, I thought that dovetails with some of the data that you collected, show me, and you have posted about the performance of our high schools. Tell us more.
Right. So I do want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to plug it. Mostschoolrankings.org, we now have, just as of last week, 4 years of academic data, and you can compare all 4 years for school or district, and 3 years of finance data. And the finance data is astounding this time from last year. So we have 2023 data on there now. You're right. And some of that, I will tell you, Missouri's ACT score average was the lowest in decades last year. We dipped below 20, which is not great. And so we are not preparing our children well. And DESE used to publish a number that they called college and career readiness percentage for the state. In 2017, it was 42%. So that means only 4 out of 10 graduates, according to DESE standards, are ready for either college or a career, and yet they got a high school diploma in 4 years. So, it used to be in the 70s, there was something, I don't know if you remember this, called checkbook math, where they kind of looked at the kids and you're probably never going to be able to do algebra or trigonometry. We're going to put you into checkbook math. And they just lowered the expectation of the student to say they can't, they have a deficit. And I hear what you're saying, which is cultural reasons have sort of caused kids who come out of certain families to just show up with a deficit. So we should meet them where they are rather than, we went through this other phase of AP for all or algebra for all. And that was every child has the capacity and the capability if we just work on what they can achieve, what their assets could be, or growth mindset. And now we're into more of a deficit mindset, which is, apologizing. What did George Bush call it? The soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not helpful, like you just said, to the child or the student. And it's not helpful to us as a country. We need to press harder and we need to have higher expectations. I did a podcast recently with Mike McShane and Rick Hess on their vision, their conservative vision for the future of education. And they pointed out that the KIPP charter schools, which are some of the highest performing in the country, for 20 years had a motto that was work hard, be nice. And they chose to drop that 4 or 5 years ago because it was suggested that it was a racist motto, work hard, be nice. I don't know of any parent who doesn't want their child to work hard and be nice. But if we decide that working hard implies something about a group of children who can't and shouldn't be expected to, then we've really lost the mission.
Yeah. Stephanie was highlighting Stevens College. It's going to be launching a Women in the Trades program. Yeah. It makes me think of my son's experience in Germany, where they bifurcate kids into and they honor and laud the vocations somewhere in the sort of middle school to high school level. And they say, look, you're not someone who's going to be a nuclear scientist, but you're going to be the best darn electrician ever. We just can tell it, however they judge it. And it seems to be a wiser way of approaching the variations in individuals' capacity and interest, and at the same time, efficiently using the education resources. I don't know. What do you think about something like that? No?
I would not want us to move to that system because in sixth grade, it's decided, I don't know, me in sixth grade, I would have wanted that decision made for me, or even ninth grade. But what we could do a much better job of, like what Stevens College is doing, is playing up the benefits of the trades, the opportunities in the trades. There's a book called The Millionaire Next Door that focuses on plumbers and electricians are most likely to be your millionaire next door. The opportunities and the need and the incredible need, and finally, recognizing that all of these professions are open to all people, regardless of your sex or race or background. Like, of course, I love to DIY some stuff. So, of course. But what we should do a better job of, I believe, is just making sure that middle schoolers and high schoolers realize the multitude of things that they could choose after high school. That includes career and college, and not just assuming that if you don't go to college, you're a loser. Because, kids have realized it's not worth it in a lot of ways, and college enrollment is down. So we need to do a better job at helping them explore their options.
Now, we talked a little bit about what you liked in this bill that was perfected last night in the Senate and what you didn't like. Now, talk a little bit about the other show me priorities that you're watching in the legislature this year that weren't in the bill.
Yeah, so open enrollment is one, and that got pretty far last year, which would just allow kids to choose a school any school in their district or in any other. You could choose any school in the state, basically. Kansas has a very strong open enrollment program. So it got through the House last year. It got through the Senate committee, and then the Senate kind of fell apart at the end of the session, so it did not get to the governor. It started off this year, I thought, still a priority, but it seems that the priorities have shifted now to expanding the ESA program, and I can't argue with that. So open enrollment, I think, is still a program that all Missouri families need, and that hasn't gone through. Also, there's something called the Quality Education Act. There's a couple versions that would really improve accountability. Our most school rankings report card is focused exclusively on academics, and the DESE report cards are focused less than half on academics. There's got to be some sort of a middle ground there where parents can find out more about the academics. So Quality Education Act would improve the academic measures on the school report cards. That, I think, has got a chance to get to the Senate. There's a couple versions, but we'll see what happens. Generally, spring break is next week for the legislature. By this time, they're really going to start talking about budget. So I'm glad that this made it through the full Senate and got the vote, because looks to me like that's going to be the priority for the rest of the. And, it does have charter school expansion in there. So I'm happy with that. I'm thrilled with that. And I'm thrilled that more kids can get scholarships if we can raise the money.
Yeah, but it's not enough. And I just remind everyone that if you go on to the showmeinstitute.org website, then you can navigate to the various metrics and accountability data that Susan and staff have assembled. You'll be astounded. And then you'll think about one of the quotes from one of my favorite people in the world, Albert Einstein, who said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's why we are advocating, as the Show Me Institute does, for some choice. We got to change it. Got to change it up. Susan, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. And the extra time, too. Just send Hannah a bill, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. All right. There she is, Dr. Susan Pendergrass. Brian, some hail might be coming in tonight?
Yeah, we are looking at potentially hail in mid-Missouri, virtually all the listening area. I've got an updated map and graphic up on our website, 939theeagle.com and kws.com. You can see exactly where you are on the map. The ballpark time, probably give or take a few minutes, is around sunset. Randy, we're looking at about 6 to 8 p.m., Pretty fast-moving storm. Large hail is the primary threat. Could be as big as golf ball-sized hail. Could be some damaging winds. Very low tornado threat. They are concerned. I talked to the Weather Service about tomorrow's tornado threat. Let's not worry about that one right now. We'll worry about that tomorrow because that's subject to change. But for tonight, folks, if you have a garage, it's going to be a good idea to get it in there. Roughly, we're talking about anywhere from 5:30 to about, let's say, 7:30 tonight. But we are looking at that, and we will certainly keep you up to date.
That's a big bummer for my neighbor who put the finishing touches on a new roof last week.
Oh, man. Yeah, and for people that have that going on, indeed. And very quickly, she was talking about the spring break. There is a committee hearing tomorrow. I've been looking for it. We profiled Travis Smith's bill about hazing. And I've been all over this story about Danny Santulli and Travis Smith's hazing bill. It was heard last week, bipartisan support. But like last year, lawmakers in both parties have just a few concerns about a couple sentences in there about the way it's written. He's got to go back and rewrite a couple of sentences, and it is not scheduled to come up tomorrow. My gut feeling is that the clock is going to be a huge factor. If he doesn't get that across the finish line, even to the floor by the end of the week, and it doesn't appear that's going to happen, it'll be tough. But a huge bill as well, a lot of interest in hazing.
And Hannah, I know you were interested in some legislation that's working its way through, maybe concerning citizens-only voting in Missouri.
Yeah, they're working on maybe a stamp to put on your driver's license.
Yeah, that's
that would
interesting.
indicate that you're a United States citizen. So
I think
they're
that's
trying
a fabulous idea. Yeah,
It seems pretty simple. I don't know. We've already got the real ID stuff coming out, which makes your driver's license look just a little bit different. So what's another stamp on there?
Well, and as we know that every state and every city and every community is now a border state, city, and community, it seems to me getting ahead of that by having that identifier makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I think that was the one of the issues that was called ballot candy in the IP reform bill was a provision that would prohibit non-citizens from voting. And people said, well, that's not really, a big deal. It already says citizens can vote. But what we've seen with the similar language that the Missouri Constitution has now in other places, larger cities have said, yeah, we're going to let non-citizens vote. And so I think, getting that cleared up, I think, is a priority for a lot of people. And I know the initiative petition reform resolution was back in committee yesterday, so we should be hearing more about that. But certainly, Hannah's right. Like, as we're updating the IDs, I don't see what would hurt in identifying that.
Going back to the pace of bills, and Susan was talking about, we have spring break coming up, and things are okay. My watch says March 13th.
Right.
The session ends when?
It would be the
May 17th.
Okay, so
Friday.
We're talking almost 2 months.
Right.
Almost 2 months.
17th.
Have we come to accept that we can't get things done just because that's the way it's always been?
It's not the way it's always been. I'm going to
make that
what
very,
I mean.
Lately, it seems that's the way it's always been. And that seems unacceptable to me.
It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And I know a lot of lawmakers are listening. I'm going to give some of you a history lesson right now. When Governor,
listen up, students. Wait a minute. Let's tap the Professor Hauswirth speaking.
I got something. I got to get let's give a little history lesson. When Governor Bond and Governor Carnahan, one a Republican, one a Democrat, were governor, they got bills across the finish line. You know Joe Bednar, you the attorney in Jeff City. You talk to Joe. I don't know the exact amount, but Governor Carnahan would sign 400 or 500 bills a year when he was governor. And by the way, a lot of those were Republican bills. People forget that. Even though he was a proud Democrat, he was, the Republicans got along pretty well with the governor. And when Kit Bond was governor, the Democrats got along with him. It seems to me that for one thing, it's so polarized now compared to then that they can't almost get anything done. They can barely get the budget done. I'm going to give a statistic here. This is on the House website, folks. You can look it up yourself. This is it. 1,684 Missouri House bills first read. They've only passed 36 bills.
Yeah.
0 have gone to the governor yet, and in the Senate, it's even less than that. So just about any bill that has a chance of pass has to be an omnibus bill, and that was never the case before. So I hear that all the time. It's always been that way. No, it has not always been that way.
My plea is not to pass 500 bills. My plea is to get the priorities of a conservative supermajority catching fire. We've heard about Boeing just having a lot of problems these days, right? They're in the doldrums.
As someone who's flying next week, I'd rather not hear about that.
Well, I thought I'd reassure you with this now deceased whistleblower who was talking about line deficits. And
was his last name Epstein?
This is not a 737 problem. It's a Boeing problem. And I know the FAA's gone in and they've done due diligence and inspections to assure that the door plugs of the 737 are installed properly and the fasteners are torqued properly. But my concern is what's the rest of the airplane? What's the rest of the condition of the airplane? And the reason my concern for that is back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs.
And it goes on and on and on. That gentleman was supposed to give what's called a legal interview. And was he scheduled to do a deposition? Guess what? He was found dead found dead in the parking lot.
Apparently self-inflicted. Apparently.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Was he in with the Clintons?
Now, do you notice the ladies on the show who were so quick to adopt the Kate Middleton is not really Kate Middleton, it's really Prince Harry's, it's
Prince William.
Oh, is it Prince William?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Harry's the redhead who got canceled a long
Prince
time
Harry,
ago.
Schmary William, I don't know. Prince William's mistress and whatever. You guys adopt that hook, line, and sinker. But you reject any conspiracy theory here. No,
I don't reject it.
No, you think he's good. You think?
Oh, I'm 100%.
I know that was a sorry. I know you were being cynical.
I'm all in on the conspiracy theories.
Isn't this scary?
I think COVID switched conspiracy theories for me.
Really?
Yeah, because every time we tried to say something truthful, we got called conspiracy theorists, and then guess what? It was all the truth. It was
true. Yeah.
Got booted off Facebook.
Right. So. It is scary. And, obviously Missouri, a lot of ties to Boeing and it's sad for that company, but I think they've made some very big mistakes. And I think what's worse is why are we not hearing more from them in that we recognize, these issues and we've done this, and this. I think people are getting more and more nervous about air travel, especially after the week from last week.
I have to ask the question, what happened? I grew up in a day when you were hired to do something, you gave it 110%. You just didn't shirk on your job.
Those days are long gone, Randy.
What? John,